Hey guys, Joe Sena, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Spartan Up podcast. This week, I'm reporting to you, well, I'm in the office right now because I just got back, but I'm reporting to you from the Ukrainian border. I jumped on a flight. I landed in Slovakia. Many of you might not know this. We've had an operation in Slovakia for 10 plus years.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.
Hey guys, Joe Sena, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Spartan Up podcast. This week, I'm reporting to you, well, I'm in the office right now because I just got back, but I'm reporting to you from the Ukrainian border. I jumped on a flight. I landed in Slovakia. It turns out, many of you might not know this, we've had an operation in Slovakia for 10 plus years. I have some great friends over there. Don't ask me why, but we decided to bring Spartan to Eastern Europe very early on in the game when we were developing the company. And thankfully we did, because it's turned out to be a tremendous market for us. I mean, they are as Spartan as they come, Eastern Europeans. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm extremely fascinated with the culture, the people of Eastern Europe. They just get it done. They don't complain. They're less likely to be depressed because they just work. I'm a big believer in just putting one foot in front of the other. And a lot of things we deal with in the first world are a result of us having too much. And they don't have as much. So I flew over, and believe it or not, I got picked up by someone from the team in Slovakia that works for the Department of Defense. And then from that, he was meeting with the Secretary of Defense the next day in Slovakia. So I was honored to be, he was basically my driver, right? The lawyer for the Department of Defense in Slovakia was my driver, drove me 8 hours deep into northern Slovakia, where I was getting closer to the Ukrainian border. I got to stay in a great hotel, not really what I was expecting going to the border. I was expecting, lots of fireworks. Lots of noise, lots of commotion, but it turned out it was very calm. It was very subdued. There was a lake next to the hotel that had a thin layer of ice on it, so I marked that down in my brain for something I would have to do within the coming days. And we started to travel around. We went over to Hungary. We saw some Spartans. We bounced around to a bunch of different countries, meeting Spartans, all ultimately in an effort to get to a refugee camp closer to the border, which we ultimately did. We got to the refugee camp, and much to my surprise, my happy surprise, Spartan vehicles were taking refugees, mostly women and children. You didn't see any men coming over the border. They had 1 or 2 bags of all their belongings, a plastic bag, literally, that's all they had. They grabbed an apple and some food, which was very, organized and laid out at the camp, and they got transported somewhere. They don't know where, right, because they didn't have relatives or anything. But our Spartan vehicles, along with many other vehicles, were taking these individuals to, I can't say destination points, but a place to stay and get organized. They were sad, but I don't know what else to say. How would you feel? How would I feel if we had to leave on a moment's notice and all we had the ability to bring was a couple of plastic bagfuls of stuff and lots of children, by the way. Many of the women, like 80% of the women had children with them, young children. So that's got to be completely disheartening for them, for the child, for the dad that stayed behind. So you're about to hear something that I recorded the first day I was up at the border, the Ukrainian border, and then I'll tell you some other stories after, if that's okay.
So where are you right now, Joe?
Right now, I'm in Slovakia. I am about 40 miles from the border. I'm standing at a refugee camp, which is extremely organized. I mean, very, very civil, very organized operation. Buses are rolling in, mostly at night, bringing about 600 to 700 refugees each night. The challenge that they're seeing is that these refugees don't necessarily have a place to go. When we hear about 2 million refugees coming through the border, 2 million plus refugees, many of them have cars, many of them have places to go. At this particular location, 600 or 700 a night are trying to figure out where they go.
So what brought you there? What's your connection to Slovakia?
10 years ago, we started putting on races here, and we built a whole logistics operation. We eventually pushed out to Hungary, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, and then Ukraine. So we have an office in the Ukraine. We have warehouses, offices here. And because of the proximity to the border, because of the proximity to transportation corridors, our team, unbeknownst to me, started working out ways to bring humanitarian aid to the border and getting it to our office in Kyiv. So yeah, Kyiv. There's some dispute here on how to pronounce it based on whether or not you're Russian, but the reality is our team in Slovakia has been amazing. They're doing God's work. They've been moving aid up and through the border into Kyiv. And, I wanted to come thank them. I wanted to see what was really going on. And at the same time, I have a lot of friends that are well-to-do. And so I told them I was coming over. They asked how they could help. Our team, when they did these round trips with the trucks, were finding out that protective vests were needed, flashlights, blankets, sleeping bags, etc. And so a couple of friends, Richard Baker, who owns a company called Hudson Bay Company, immediately sent funds so we could procure these things. Chris Birch sent funds so we could procure these things. The Spartan community, all of Eastern Europe's community actually started pouring in. So it's been pretty incredible to watch this whole thing go down.
What are you hearing from Spartan Ukraine?
I think I'm supposed to speak to our team in the Spartan Ukraine in the next hour. They wanted to speak to me. They wanted to give me an update. But as crazy as this sounds, spirits are high. They are dug in, and they're not giving up. I mean, we have, as you know, Marion, we've been doing this podcast for quite a long time. We have tremendous U.S. military contacts. Surprising, many of the people we know are on the ground here, came to see us yesterday and filled us in. Many of the U.S. military are shocked at the will of the Ukrainians and as well as the lack of will of the Russians. It is amazing that there is a line of communication between the Russians and Americans to make sure things don't escalate. So I think that's a sigh of relief for many Americans. That would be a sigh of relief for me. The other thing is, I've always wondered over the years, right, where you're watching these disasters happen around the world, and there's all kinds of ways where you could support financially the disaster, but you wonder, where does that money go? Does it actually make its way to where it's most needed? And at least here in Central Europe, I'm seeing the funds, the support get loaded into trucks and be brought across the border almost immediately and on its way to the capital, which is where the front line of the battle is taking place. So that's just nice to know.
So what have you seen so far since you've been there, Joe?
Well, the biggest surprise for me, at least in Slovakia, was how organized this side of the border is. I mean, we are 350 kilometers away from any quote unquote action, fireworks, where the stuff is really happening. So I guess it shouldn't be a surprise. But if you watch the news and you're in the U.S. like I was just 3 or 4 days ago, I did expect it to be mass mayhem. And I think anybody I speak to back in the States feels like, oh my God, be safe. And it's fairly, at least it feels fairly safe where we are. Buses are rolling in now. They said at night, you'll see the buses here behind me. At night is when they're getting most of the refugees rolling in, not during the day.
You talked to the drivers of the trucks that are going in. What have you heard from them?
One of the things it made me think about, Marion, was there are some bad actors around the world. We all get upset when North Korea fires missiles and we see it in the news, or when Putin invades the Ukraine. But we should also be extremely proud with all the good actors around the world. And I think the good actors far outweigh the bad actors. And what I've seen here in Central Europe is everybody's leaning in and doing work and willing to give to help those in need.
What's the biggest lesson you've taken so far from the days you've been there?
We had a meeting yesterday with the U.S. military, and we were talking about exactly that. What's the biggest lesson we learned here? And, many of us give, but do we really give to the point where it hurts? And that's when you're truly giving. And so I think it's a reflection for me, right, to look in the mirror, and for all of us to say, not just in Ukraine, but in any part of life, are you giving to the point where it hurts you? Because that's what, if we all did that, the world would be a better place.
Who's there with you from Spartan?
I've got John with me, and I've got the entire Spartan Central Europe team. Obviously, we don't have the Ukrainian Spartan team. They're in the Ukraine. And then I got a new friend of mine, Nicholas, who works in a shared office space we have down in Florida, who literally overnight, he's a programmer and a veteran, developed an app called Bring Them Home Ukraine. He had this idea, which is a great idea, a week and a half ago. And he said, geez, all of these refugees, how are they going to find each other? They're all displaced. There's many people died. And if he can create a crowdsourcing solution, it would be a great way to solve a very large problem. And so he's here with me because he wanted to talk to some of the NGOs, right, non-governmental organizations that are dealing with this problem, and so that he can gain insight and figure out how to make this app work and work quickly.
What did everybody in the U.S. tell you when you said you were heading over there?
Everybody in the U.S. said, you're crazy, be safe, are you sure you want to do that? But listen, we have a team over here. We have a team over here that's living here every day, and they run a great business for us in this region of the world. And so as a leader, what am I going to be, a fraud? Let me come over, let me shake their hand, pat them on the back and say, hey, you guys are doing great work. And we have a team in the Ukraine. So who am I if I wasn't willing to come over? Now, the reality is I've been safe and sound here on this side of the border, right? We've been able to go to restaurants. We've been able to sleep in a hotel. It's been rather tame, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I came over and I was able to see everybody and say thank you.
And you posted a video earlier with one of the Ukrainian employees, right? You want to just tell us about that before we hop on?
I did. One of our Ukrainian employees, a few of them actually, left the Ukraine. They started crying a few days into it. They were in complete shock and disbelief, and they came back. And so they're living here in Slovakia now, and they want to go home.
So anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just to thank everybody around the world who's sending supplies over here and helping out the Ukrainians who have a huge fight in front of them.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first a message from today's sponsor, DUROLANE. You know that knee pain can really slow you down. Sometimes that knee pain is due to osteoarthritis, a disease that affects some 14 million Americans. Learn about osteoarthritis knee pain and how to alleviate it at oakneepainrelief.com. You'll find information there about non-surgical, non-opioid treatments for osteoarthritis knee pain that may help delay the need for knee surgery. One treatment you'll find there is DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months of relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. It's indicated for the treatment of mild to moderate osteoarthritis knee pain when conservative treatments have not worked. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. Full prescribing information is at DUROLANE.com. Spartans say no to limits. You can learn more at oakneepainrelief.com. That's oakneepainrelief.com. All right, back to the interview.
It felt very powerful to actually be there and not be watching it from the comfort of my couch, on the news. And then I said, let's make a push into the border and decide, do we want to actually cross over into the Ukraine? Now, not to sound like a crazy person, the reality is it was about 350 kilometers away from the border where the action is, where bombs are dropping, the fight is happening. So it wasn't bad at the border either when we got there. It was very calm. There were hundreds of trucks, Spartan truck included, online, waiting to unload and have goods, humanitarian aid be transported from that border up those 350 kilometers into the quote unquote into the fight. But again, it was so calm. I mean, there were a couple of restaurants open right there at the border. And so we stayed there for a while. And then I was very fortunate. A couple of my friends are very high-level special forces operators. They were in and around the border. There's lots of, allied forces, military that are humming around the border of Poland, Ukraine, Slovakia, Ukraine, and they're just organizing aid, and they're organizing gear and logistics. And I'm sure also making sure that should this thing get ugly and uglier and actually cross the border into one of the NATO countries, there'll be some support there with those countries to make sure that doesn't happen. From there, we traveled back and forth to refugee camp, back to the border. We hiked a mountain because there was a mountain nearby and I couldn't resist it. So I hiked up a mountain just to get some exercise. I mean, when you're doing that much traveling, you need to definitely move some blood around. So that was a welcome, quiet moment to be able to hike a mountain. Jumped in the lake, broke some ice, jumped in the lake. Got to meet a lot of Spartans. And then I got to talk to our Ukrainian team. We have a Ukrainian team, in the fight. They're in Kyiv. They're at the capital. And they said some interesting things to me. They said, it's just become part of our life. One of us went to the spa today, which was still open. He said, we almost had to laugh. We were making breakfast and a missile flew over our building, and all we could think of was not to burn the potatoes we were cooking. And so that just goes to show you how it just becomes part of your life, which is strange, his words. And he said the same thing. He said, Joe, we need night vision goggles and we need bulletproof vests. We got plenty of food, believe it or not. We got plenty of water. We need night vision goggles and bulletproof vests. So we did our part. We helped secure some of those items. They need hundreds of thousands more. And they got shipped into the Ukraine, which was nice and rewarding. And hopefully it helps some people. The big takeaway for me from this whole experience was, and it came from my friend in the U.S. military. He was telling me a story about, he has 2 young boys, and his wife has been doing FaceTime with him while he's overseas, while he's up in Eastern Europe. And she said, it's amazing. Our older son, who's like 3 years old, is giving his little toy cars to the younger son to play with. And he said, wow, we must be great parents because most kids don't share, and it's amazing that our older son is sharing with our younger son. But upon closer inspection, the mom realizes, wait a minute, he's only sharing the cars that have no eyes on them. 80% of the cars he has these little eyes on them, and 20% have no eyes. They're less valuable to him. So they did a test while Dad, with me on the Ukrainian border, is on FaceTime, and they put all the cars with no eyes under the pile of cars with eyes, and he watched them play again. Sure enough, he dug to the bottom of the pile to find the less valuable cars with no eyes and was willing to share those. And a light bulb went off, because here we are on the border. The light bulb was, my buddy says to me, Joe, we have to share as human beings the cars with eyes. We have to give to the point where it hurts. Otherwise, you're not really giving anything, right? If you're giving these cars away to your brother that have no value to you, what are you really giving? You're not giving anything. So I think it's a great lesson. It was a great lesson for me. It's a great lesson for all of us that if you're going to give, and we should all give, you're not really giving unless it hurts. So, I gave a little bit of my time. It hurt a little bit because I had to jump on a plane and car, leave my family. But it could have hurt more. I could have did more. So that's my big takeaway. There's lots of folks in the world that don't have what we have. They're going through whatever they're going through. In this case, it's a war. And we can all give, but give to the point where it hurts. If anybody out there wants to help, wants to engage in this process, it is so easy. Literally, in 5 minutes, I could have you set up in Slovakia. You could be helping. You could be giving. They could use your help. There's at last count, I think over 3 million people have left the country. Most of those women and children. So they could use the help. If you got free time, if you want to do something, you could certainly write a check. But if you really want to feel something that's rewarding, I can help set you up. Just get in touch with me, Joe at Spartan.com.
Do you know someone who needs a little help staying motivated, staying informed, getting or staying mentally and physically resilient? We're here 3 days every week with a mix of content to help you stay strong. From mindset to nutrition and everything in between. Listen every Tuesday to hear Joe Sena, Spartan Race founder and CEO. And the rest of the week, join us for DECA, endurance, and classic episodes. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.